background noise is. Avik, you are coming on 14th, right?
Yes.
So booked your ticket, everything is fine, no?
Yes, everything is fine.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Professor Suman, should we wait a little bit more or we should start?
Hello? Yes, Shruti.
Hello?
We can start, I think.
Yeah.
People will join. People will
Okay.
join gradually. No problem.
Okay. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So, okay. So, very good evening to everyone. So, I thank you all for joining. And on behalf of the faculty members of DIICT, I would like to welcome you all. Okay. So, this is the first ever event organized by the newly founded Artificial Intelligence and Language Processing Center that is newly founded in DIICT. So in short, it's the AILP Center. So on behalf of all the faculty members who have contributed towards finding this institute, finding this AILP Center, I would like to thank all of you on behalf of them. And so basically, I would like to begin by saying a few words about the AILP Center before I request our director sir to say a few words. So this is actually the AILP Center. The vision is that to provide a platform for collaborative research. Okay, so among the institutes, like within DIICT, with across the institutes as well. Okay, so that is the main objective behind setting up this center, the AILP Center, to create a vibrant research environment, not only for the faculties, but also for the students, because we have several budding research scholars, not only in DIICT, but also in several other institutions. So we would like to collaborate on the research front by providing this platform and having like to see the research that is being done by various institutes and to see if we can collaborate and produce some innovative research innovation results. Also, one of the activities of this AILP Center is to have regular technical discussions. So the today's event is actually part of that. So we are planning to organize bi-monthly colloquium series. Okay, so that will have lectures and talks from experts as well as from the research scholars in DIICT as well as from other faculty members. So basically, it will provide a platform and for the research. So we will be inviting eminent researchers from across the globe to deliver a talk, okay, deliver a lecture, and that will be happening bi-monthly. Okay, so this is one of the events that has been organized. And secondly, we would also like to have yearly events, yearly summer schools and winter schools going on in the institute, so that we have a very productive research environment in our institute, in the AILP community at large, in Gandhinagar, in Gujarat, and also contribute nationally and collaborate with international stakeholders. So that's a little bit about the AILP Center. Now I would like to request our director, sir, Professor K.S. Dasgupta, to say a few words and formally inaugurate this AILP Center as well as the colloquium series that we are planning to have.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti. In fact, it's my pleasure and privilege to attend this Center for Artificial Intelligence and Language Processing, which all of you have initiated. And I compliment and congratulate all of you, the faculty members of the IICT, who has taken this bold decision to start this activity. And also the participants, a warm welcome to this webinar, which is being arranged by our faculty members. And all of you must be knowing about the IICT, but I feel that this pandemic has given us a new dimension, because if you see that pandemic has created a historical divide. One is before Corona and is after Corona. So at this point, what is our disadvantage? We want to convert it into an advantage, and because of which this sort of effort is being initiated by my colleagues. So really, it's a great thing. But I see the following plus points, or the positive points of this particular engagement in terms of webinar, in terms of seminars on campus, and all these things. For me, I want to have a research ecosystem, and that ecosystem need not be only within the IICT. We want across Gujarat, that is, we want an inter as well as intra ecosystem for the research. And now the point here is that we are the state private university by legislation, but I feel we have to have a social commitment or institutional commitment to see that it is not only the research ambience is improved in our institute, but research ambience should overall research ambience should be very vibrant, very positive in Gujarat or around Gujarat. So all the participants who have joined us today or will be joining in subsequent meeting, I feel like this, that we want to synergize the strengths of individuals, and we want to make it such that this becomes a collaborative research platform. It becomes whether it could be institute to institute, it could be students to our institute. So all these processes are important. Now you may ask me that why it is important for us, the IICT. For me, the thing is that there are a lot of bright students outside the IICT. They have different opportunities, and they want to aspire for different programs to study the new things, new skill, and new research area they want to dwell and that sort of areas. So what I feel is that if we have this sort of a connectivity which allows all of you to interact with the domain experts who are available in the IICT. Now, you may ask, oh, okay, we can come and do that. But, in a structured way, if it is done, then the positive point for it is that some of you who have the research ability who have the research potential will be able to apply for our research program, and then you can, if you are selected, you can do research with us, and that will do what? We have quality research scholars in our campus. Quality research scholar with a quality faculty will lead to good publications. Good publications will improve the perception of the institute, as well as the person who are doing research in our institute. And overall, it will have a cascading effect on the in the state level education system, because we are committed that we also grow, we allow others to grow, and this sort of a joint growth will allow each of us to have our own area where we can prosper. Now, the point, another important point which I feel that I should mention, that many of you are might have been interested in going abroad, but because of this pandemic, you are not able to go abroad, and now you have the opportunity to remain in your home state wherever you are. If you are in Gujarat, fine, but you want to upskill your knowledge, and if you want to upskill your knowledge, you have to make your foundation strong, both in mathematics and in the domain area. So as I understand, I think this center is planning to have program in winter school as well as summer school. And what happens is that these are not on campus, so you can have a time multiplexing of your program with other program, and you can join this. And if you join this sort of a program, your foundation or your concept will be strengthened by this sort of deliberations and discussions. In that case, you will be in a position to upskill your knowledge. If some of you wants to do research in your own institute, you can do that. We can act as a mentor for that. Ultimately, we should, if it is like we should not only energize the strengths of the individual institute, but we also should see that if there are some weaknesses in other places, whether we can try to improve upon that. In that process, we are also benefited, because we get good students, we get a good research ecosystem. And it is something like that. We grow and we allow others to grow, and this sort of growing will help us, all of us. So I'm sure that this sort of a program will create a new vibrancy in the research system, and all of you who have potential but who may not have opportunities will be able to participate in this sort of a thing. It will not disturb your regular program. The reason is that you can, these programs will be in the evening or some of the time, and I hope this winter school, summer school are done that way. So if this sort of a connectivity of the networking is done, then you can always rub shoulders with our faculty members. We can always have a chat with the bright young students or the faculty member, and then we know each other, and knowing each other is an indication that we can decide. You can decide which area you like most, which area you want to refresh, which area you want to do research. All these things are possible. So I feel it's a very good opportunity, and I think that it is a good opportunity for us as well as for all of you who are outside the campus. And sometime, now we are going on an online mode. After that, we can have a blended thing, because now, this pandemic has made us understand that we should be able to do online first, online and blended the second one, and on campus could be the last options. So overall, it's a good initiative, but everything is a function of what is the interest the participants outside this campus show. In fact, I would request the organizers of this program even some of you who has the potential to give some colloquium or some lectures, you should be able to give. It is not that it is always one-sided. It is always from experts, and it is for the students of DICT. If there is any other institute in Gujarat or anywhere, if they want to share their research ideas or research credentials, we are always we'll be happy to learn, because every researcher has certain new goals, and that goal can be different from other researchers, and there is no threat that your research will be stolen by somebody. You can always tell about the concept and about the foundation of what prompted you to do that. So I overall am very happy, and but happiness should not be short-lived. It should be a long-term happiness. And the happiness should tell us that when we get students for our PhD program, when we get students for our postdoctoral, we have a postdoctoral problem, positions are available where we need students with a very bright publication, PhD, as well as the publication in a very reputed journal. So, and we have sponsored researches there. Sometimes we don't get JRFs. So this will create the resources which will be required, which will be good for us and good for other institutes also. So overall, I'm very happy, but happiness should be a long staying happiness, and happiness should give us certain dividend to us as well as to the students. So let me at this point conclude by saying Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and that is the point. Now, I'm not making a political statement, but I'm telling with from my heart, inside heart, saying that we want to grow, we allow others to grow, we can help others to grow, because this is our commitment, and this is a commitment from as a state private university in Gujarat, and it is our commitment because we cannot always say that we are a state private university, but we are not doing anything for the state. And education of Gujarat level should be enhanced if we can, and then in the national level, Gujarat should be on the top. So thank you very much. All the best wishes from my side, and I hope this sort of interactions, whether it is bi-monthly or whatever way you want to decide, but most important parameter is that we should have a calendar for the winter school as well as the summer school. Now, before I conclude, I would also remind Shruti to tell something about our AI/ML program, which we are initiating from 17th of September, if I am correct. And here, a lot of students can participate. Participation charge is not very high, but it is a well-organized, well-thought-out 2 weeks program, and it is like morning session and alternate days program it is. So all these things, I think Shruti can say a few words before the actual thing comes. So thank you, good luck, and all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So as Director Sir has requested, I would like to throw some light on the online workshop being conducted from 17th
You have frozen.
of September, learning and deep learning. So basically, okay, am I visible now properly?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that workshop is a 2-week long workshop, and so alternate days, one day it will be a theory session, on another day it will be a practical session, a hands-on session. So broadly, the areas that will be covered is first of all the mathematical foundation that is required for machine learning and deep learning, supervised learning techniques. One day will be dedicated to the theory of that, another day for the hands-on session. Similarly, for unsupervised learning techniques, and we have deep neural networks, and as well as some very advanced topics in deep learning. So all of these topics will be covered during a 2-week long workshop. So the details of that workshop, I will send it to you on through the registered the email address through which today morning I sent the email. Okay, so all of you, please consider that. And the registration link is also provided in that flyer. And the registration details are also there. So please take a look, and I'm sure you will benefit a lot by attending that workshop. So now that's all from my side. I will share the details on the email. So can I request Professor Suman to continue and
Okay.
speak a few words about the AILP Center? Yeah.
I would like to just tell you only one thing, that from the very beginning of my academic career, what I felt is that teaching could be a collaborative process. And sorry, I am very sorry. The teaching could be an individualistic process and research could be an collaborative process. But unfortunately in India, we are following the reverse. In many a time, we ask our colleagues to take part in co-teaching, but very rarely we ask our colleague to take part in the research. The reason is very simple. I am not blaming here anybody, but it is the system to be blamed, that everybody in the academics is thinking about growth in terms of promotion, but not in terms of holistic growth as far as teaching learning is concerned. So one of my main motto to create or to join or to participate in this kind of center is that I can engage myself in the collaborative research. So this collaboration, as our director rightly said, is not only within DICT. It should be across the globe. So I might have some collaboration in the IIT Kharagpur, in IIT Jammu, or in CR Rao Advanced Institute of Mathematics, Statistics, Computer Science, or University of Dayton, University of Norway, everywhere. So that is my only motto by which I joined this kind of a group, which I believe can motivate the collaborative research as well as inclusivity. Inclusivity means we should include everybody, the research scholar, the faculty, the eminent scientists, everybody, so that we get benefit from each other and we take part in collaborative research. So I urge all of you who are within DICT, who are outside DICT, please keep in touch, please share your views, please share your comments, so that we get benefited from your experience, from your comments, etc., and we can include you in the group so that the group grows and we have more inclusivity, more research, more knowledge, more holistic growth of the society. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now, Shruti, you can invite Sujata to start her presentation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor Suman. So may I now request Sujata, if you are ready, so you can share your screen. So she's Miss Sujata, and she is going to talk about her PhD thesis research topic, which is modular facial expression recognition using deep neural networks. So Sujata, can please continue.
So is my screen is visible?
Yes, it is visible.
So very good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you to all the AILP members to give me a chance to speak over here. So let's continue with today's discussion with the topic of the modular facial expression recognition using the deep neural network. So before going to inside the topic, you need to understand what is the facial expressions. So basically the facial expressions is the some motions or movement of the muscles beneath the skin of the face. It is proved by many researchers that these motions convey the emotion of an individual to the observers. Emotions can be displayed either the visually or the verbally through the spoken words. And most important way to express the emotion using the facial expressions. So like for instance, human can display the emotions of fear and disgust. You can clearly identify using their voice and the joy and the happy in their facial expression. So you need to understand what is the facial expression recognition. So the facial expression recognition is the task of classifying the expressions on the face image into the various category of the expressions. So basically these 6 universal face expressions like happy, sad, angry, disgust, surprise and the fear. These are the 6 universal face expressions. So this is the generic pipeline for the facial expression recognition. You have given some input image, apply some pre-processing techniques for handling the missing values, for handling the illumination variance, for handling the null values. Many more things we can resolve in the pre-processing step, then apply the feature extraction techniques, then do the classification using the classification techniques like SVM, KNN and many more, and get your output. So facial expressions is a very important topic, and that's why it's drawn the attention of many researchers, because it can be used in different applications like security, video conferencing, affective computing. It is a system or device that can develop human interactions, human recognition, human effect, that kind of thing. It can be used in the, it can be used in the behavioral science, it can be used in the lie detection and so on. Many more applications where you can use the facial expression recognition. So these are the databases which are used till now. So this is the data set from the lab control, small size in the wild, and then the large scale. It is the algorithm starting from the handcrafted, shallow learning and the deep learning. So most of the traditional methods like LBP, TOP, SVM, these are the traditional methods, basically use the handcrafted and the shallow learning based on the lab control and the small size data sets. But in 2013, 2 challenges, FPR 2013 and emotion recognition in the wild was happened, and they collected relatively very big training data from the real world scenarios. So they start transition from the lab control to in the wild setting, and these are the FPR database is very big and emotion database is also very big. So in the meanwhile, when the chip processing capability increased, like GPUs and different architectures also increased, then we are moving to the deep learning techniques like HoloNet, AffectNet, VGG and many more, that is start from 2015 to till now. So these are the algorithms and these are the data set mainly used in the machine learning to the deep learning techniques. So what is the difference between the machine learning and the deep learning? So machine learning is a concept where the computer program can learn and adopt a new data without any human interference. So in the machine learning, you have given some input data, apply some feature extraction techniques, doing some classification over there. Then so now your model is getting trained, and then you apply your data set and you will get the output over here. But in the deep learning, a subset of the machine learning in the artificial intelligence that has network capable of the learning. The learning can be unsupervised, supervised or semi-supervised. So main difference is that you have given the input data same, but the feature extraction and the classification techniques are combined in the deep learning. And just you have after classification, your model get trained, you apply your testing data set and you will get the output. So this is all about the machine learning and the deep learning. So what is the motivation and the challenge, why we are choosing this type of problem like facial expression recognition? So basically the human effect is the emotional and the internal state of an individual that can include the facial expressions, behaviors, gestures and psychological signals like the heart. So facial expression itself is an efficient way of the communication. It is natural, non-intrusive and convey the the information similar to the spoken words without saying any word. Our ultimate goal of this work is to study the facial expression algorithm in the unrestricted and uncontrolled environment. Means we are able to handle the wild type of data set. Means the images are taken in the real world scenarios. So human can recognize the facial expression without any effort, but for the machine is very difficult and the challenging to recognize any facial expressions. So main challenge in the automatic facial expressions recognition, as we are going to handle the illumination variations, means the image is taken into different lighting conditions, at pose variation, different types of positions should be there. Occlusions means persons wearing glasses, mufflers, and other thing on the face. Detection of the facial part from the face. This is very challenging because we are not working on the full face images. We are just taking some portions of the face from the given face image. So how we do that? Come to here. So human have the capability to identify the person with small information or small region of the face. As I am given to you just eyes of one person, I think everyone can able to guess who is he. If we add more parts like nose, lips, and the forehead, you can easily recognize that she is Aishwarya Rai Bachchan. So it seems that the forehead, eyes, nose, and lips are more informative for identifying any person. So basically, we are working on that 4 regions of the face. But manually crop the face is very difficult. So what we do, we are just plotting the 68 landmark points taken from this paper. That is the best paper in the Mazda painting, which identify the 68 landmark point of the face. We draw that landmark point on the face, and with the help of these landmark points, we draw these type of bonding bosses with the help of these landmark points. So we draw the forehead, eyes, nose, and the lips, and then we cropped. Then we cropped and get our database like this. So after that, our database something is look like this. So till now we cropped our database. We processed our database and cropped it and ready for the experiment. So now, before going to inside our model, I'm assuming that maybe some of you not aware about how DNN and the CNN works. So here I am give some overview about the deep neural network. So deep neural network is the architecture of the deep learning. Deep learning is a technique that mimic the human brain. And in the deep neural network, it has multiple layers between the input and the output layer. This is our input layer, this is hidden layer, this is hidden layer, and this is output layer. So we have 2 hidden layer, 1 input and 1 output layer. So we have 4 input over here, x0, x1, x2, and x3. These are the input. When these input get passed to the hidden layer, some weight they will get assigned. So before going to weight assigned, you need to understand what type of matrix get formed over here. So the matrix is get formed 4 cross 3 with respect to the input feature and the neurons in the hidden layer. So when the weight is assigned like W11 dash, so what is the meaning of W11? So from the first neuron, this input is passing to the first neuron of the hidden layer 1. Similarly, when we assign this weight, that means from the second neuron, this input is passing to the first neuron of the hidden layer 1. Like this, we assign all the inputs. Similarly, we get a matrix get formed over here. The 3 output came from here, and 2 are the neurons in the hidden layer 2. So the matrix is something 3 cross 2. Now the matrix is 2 by 1. This is our output, and this is our predicted value. So what will happen when what will happen in the hidden neuron? So in the hidden neuron, input gets multiplied with the weights and summation will be done, bias will be added, and then activation function applied on the top of that. So basically two type of function, two type of operation from in the each neuron in the hidden in each neuron in the hidden layer. So the output is F11 is the function, output is came like 011. Similarly, this neuron is 012, this is 013, similarly 021 and 022. Finally, we get our predicted value. So this is our predicted value and this is our actual Y value, is the actual value. These two values getting compared. So for the comparison, we have to use the loss function. So what is the loss function? Loss function is the Y minus the Y hat whole square. So what is this function? So this function is basically trying to see the difference between the Y and Y hat and the Y. So my main aim is to reduce this loss value. Then only I will be basically getting the Y hat is similar to the Y. So you need to decrease that loss value for getting the similar output like the Y hat is to the Y. For that decreasing of the loss function, you need to use the optimizer. So there are lots of optimizer available. I am here to discuss about one, that is the gradient descent. So gradient descent is basically updates the weight and find out the best weight which compute your predicted value so that Y hat gets similar to the Y. So how will you how the gradient descent work, how you update the weights? So for that the procedure is called the back propagation came here. So what back propagation does? Back propagation is basically, this is the gradient descent. So back propagate the update the weight because this is our loss value. So we start the back propagation from the here. We update the weights. The weight is updated using this weight function. This weight formula like W nu is equals to W1 minus the learning rate multiplied by the derivative of the loss function with respect to the weight itself. Suppose the weight here is W21. So we replace this W is equals to W21. So basically we get the new weight using the old weight minus the learning rate multiplied with the derivative of the loss function with respect to the weight of W21. So why we need to calculate the derivative? This is a question. Why we need to calculate the derivative? For that, suppose our first weight is initialized over here with respect to the loss and the weights update. So how we check the derivative? Basically find the slope. So derivative is basically compute the slope and check the slope is positive or negative. Let's see what is the slope of this particular point. Just draw the straight line and check whether is this positive slope or negative slope. Just check the right hand side of this particular line is pointing down or pointing up. You can see that this line is pointing down. Right hand side this line is pointing down. That means the weight, the slope of that point is or weight is negative slope. Something, if the weight is initialized over here, just draw the straight line, check the right hand side of that particular line is pointing up. That means this is the slope, is the positive slope. You can do it by mathematically also. So let's suppose so for you just decrease your loss value and reach the main aim of the gradient descent to reach is this particular point that is called as the global minima point. So you need to reach over here. If you're not if your loss value is decreasing, that means you are reaching in this particular point. But if your loss value is not decreasing, that means your point is rotating itself. So like this is a weight and initialized over here, and this is our global minima. So global minima value is something like 4, and this points weight initialization is value like 1. So we need to reach over here. So what we do for that? Simply we need to add some value with this weight. How? So use this formula, same formula, just W old, that is this, minus we have the negative slope, negative and negative, that means positive. So so that means we added some value in our old weight. So if we add some old weight value, we are reaching here. So but how fast or how slow we are reaching there? So that is depend on that learning rate. So if we take a small learning rate, like this. So we reach to the global minima, where it will take few time to reach in the global minima. But if we take a large learning rate, what will happen? Your weight will moving here and never comes to this particular point. So you need to you should take that learning rate that is suitable for your gradient descent, and it will reach to the global minimum. So what about and the other weight initialization is over here. So its value is something here. So you need to subtract some value. So that point will able to reach over here. What will do for that? So this is the positive slope, and when we subtract your old value with the negative positive, that means negative slope. So basically means you subtract something from your old weight and reaching into the global minima. In this way you are doing the gradient descent. So generally learning rate is used most of the time is 0.001, but that is you can also find using the hyperparameter tuning techniques that will help you to find the learning rate. So in this front propagation and the back propagation is taking as the one epoch. How do you find that you are the right way with this particular learning rate? You see, after some epoch, your loss value is getting decreased. That means you are in the right way and you will reach to this global minima easily. But if you are not getting this loss value, if you are not decreasing this loss value, that means that is the problem with your derivative or this learning rate. So be careful about that. That means you are never converging anywhere. So that is all about the DNN that is going to use in our model. So now comes to the CNN. So CNN is CNN is the one of the main category of the image recognition, image classifications, and CNS take as input as an image, process it and classify under the certain condition categories. So that's input that we apply the filter on the top of the input and getting some output. So what are the operation performed inside the CNN? The first important component is the convolution. So basically in the mass, convolution is just the merge of the two set of the information. But here convolution is applied on the input data using some convolution filters like this. We applied this filter on the top of the image and produce the feature map. So these filters are the network parameter that need to be learned, and these filters detect small portions like edges or nose, eye, something like that. They detect from the input images, and the filter size is here is the 2x3. You can take any number of filters. So how the convolution is performed, let's see. So this is our input image 6x6. Apply this filter on the top of the input image. So this 3x3 block is called as the receptive field, and do the dot product between this and getting the output is added into the feature map. Similarly, we do some shift your filter in the one step, because we have taken the stride is equals to 1. So stride is basically define the how much we move the convolution filter in each step. Like if we're talking about stride is equals to 2, so first is start from here, then skip this one and start from this is our second receptive field. So we are not talking about this stride over here, we're just working on this stride is equals to 1. Then add the output into the feature map. So this, like this, we add the value, do the dot product of this receptive field with the filter. So we get one feature map like this. So basically that is detect the diagonal edges presented in the image. Similarly, that is the edges in the input image. Similarly, if we apply this second filter on the top of this input image, so the process is repeat. The result is added into the other feature map. Same thing is happen. So this type of so for two filter we are getting the two feature map of the 4x4 matrices. So you can see that your input size is 6x6, but your output size is 4x4. If you want to same size as input as the output, just use the padding over here and then apply the filters over here, and you will get the output as the same as the input. Means you will get the 6x6 output instead of the 4x4. So we are talking till now we are talking about the grayscale images, but in the RGB images there are 3 channels: red, green, and blue. For that there are different matrices, or you can say channel, and each matrices apply the different filters for individually channels. So means for red, this is the red channel matrix, and apply this filter over here. Again for the green channel for this matrix, and for the red channel for the blue filter, and this is the blue matrix. So for the RGB you need to do everything individually. So convolution versus the fully connected. So you can just see that how convolution will done. So input image convolve with the filters and getting the feature map. But in the fully connected layer, you need to give some 1D vector input. So you need to transfer this input in do the flatten into the 1D dimension, and then you have to give into the input to the fully connected layer and getting some output. So yes, this is the weight sharing type of thing. This is our input images, this is our filters, and getting the output. So only 9 inputs are used in this particular procedure, like this, and then only connect to the 9 input, not fully connected. Then when we shift the filter and compute these values, that is basically use only the 3, because already we have the 3 these type of value over here. So that is basically type of the shared weight. In the shared weight we particularly use the same vector getting formed previously. So in the the value -1 use lesser number of parameter compared to 3. That's and the max pooling. What is the max pooling? Is basically downsample your feature map. This is our feature map, and pooling just downsample your feature map. 3 types of pooling used in the CNN: average, max, and min. But main pooling is used is the max pooling, so where we just divide the images feature map into the 2x2 matrices and taken the maximum from them. So like 3 is the maximum, here 0 is the maximum, here 3 is the maximum, here 1 is the maximum. So take this is as output. Similarly here -1, here 1, here 0, here 3. So this is the max pooling that is used for reduce your downsample your the feature map. this is whole of this CNN as work. You have given some input images, do the convolution over there, max pooling for reducing your feature map, convolution max. You can repeat it any number of times, that is based on your data set. Then flatten the output and given to the input as the fully connected layer, and do the classification of your given input. So now comes to our architecture that is based on the deep neural network. That this is the double channel based deep neural network. So our proposed architecture is where we give some input images, do the modular, do the cropped of the input images. Then we do some pre-processing techniques over here like histogram equalization and the data augmentation. The histogram equalization is the distribution of the particular type of data. By equalizing the histogram, we can improve your you can improve your appearance and the contrast in the given image. And by the data augmentation, you can create the synthetic images over here. Detail is given in the coming slides. So then apply the feature extraction method, that is the VGG phase with the fine tuning. VGG phase is the architecture of the 16 layer. We modify the architecture, or we fine tune on this architecture according to our data set, and taking the features from that architecture for individually for the forehead, eyes, nose, and the lips, and then combine the features from all the regions and getting one feature vector. This is the one channel. In the other channel, here I am giving just input image as in the data set, but here I converted the image into two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern. What is it? I will explain in the coming slide. Just means you convert the pixel domain into the some other domain, and then crop the images. Apply the same pre-processing technique, the histogram equalization and the data augmentation. Here I have proposed the two-layer CNN for computing the features for the forehead, eyes, nose, and the lips. Getting the features from each of the regions of the face, getting one feature vector, then combined both the feature vector came from this channel and the other channel. Then do the classification using the SVM and the KNN and getting our output. So let's start. What are the pre-processing? So histogram equalization is, as I told, we can improve the contrast and the appearance of the input image. You can see this is our original image. This is the equalized image, and this is the histogram of the original image, and this is the histogram of the equalized image. This is the data augmentation, where we create some synthetic images, like if we flip the images, that will generate one image. If we rotate the image, that is also generate some other image. Here we add some noise, Gaussian noise, where mean is equals to 0 and the variance is equals to 1. So we from that type of thing, we create some synthetic type of images for increase our data set, because you know that DNA needs a large data set. So this is the first channel architecture, VGG phase, that is trained on the millions of the images. It has 60-layer neural network. So 13 is the convolution layer and divided into the 4 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 block is I'm taking as it is, because that is that gives us very small information, and the last block is changed according to our requirement, according to our data set. I'm not using the VGG phase for the classification purpose. I'm just using for the feature extraction purpose, and get the 1/1024 feature length for each. This block is modified with this parameters. That is the table taken from after too many experiments. So that is based on the experiment only. So this is the parameter of this particular layer, convolution layer 1. This is the convolution layer 2, 5th block, convolution layer 2, 5th block, convolution layer 3. Sorry, this is a misprint, that should be 3. And this is the max pooling layer for the downsampling on your feature map. The size of input for the regions are input for eyes, nose, lips, and the forehead. That is the input of the yes. So how we compute the two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern? So Taylor feature is successfully applied in this paper, and they prove that Taylor expansion is given the good result in the field of the facial expressions. So how they compute the Taylor feature, Taylor pixel feature? In that each pixel is expanded in the several term according to the Taylor series. How? So this is the nth order Taylor pixel feature, whose center pixel is the PC. PC is our center pixel, and compute the nth order Taylor pixel using that formula. But they are stopped till second order. So here I am showing just the second order Taylor pixel feature. How they compute the first order Taylor pixel feature is expressed as, this is our central pixel. So this F0 of phi is basically the mean of this 3 by 3 matrices. This phi is the mean of the outer layer except the PC. This is the mean of this gray layer. So like this, we compute the first order Taylor pixel feature. Similarly, we compute the second order Taylor pixel feature is like that. This is similar to first order, and then at the second order. So here for a particular pixel, we include the two neighboring layers. So phi is the mean of full pixel values, and this phi, this is same as this phi 1 is the mean of this gray layer, and this phi 2 is the mean of this blue layer. So like that, they compute the second order Taylor pixel feature. So from that, we are getting something called as the Taylor feature map. Now convert the Taylor feature map into the Taylor feature pattern. That will basically create the histogram and use as the features for the facial expressions. Now this is the all about the paper which we are considered as the one-dimensional. So I have taken some observation from the one-dimensional Taylor feature pattern. Second order Taylor feature pattern with one dimensional provide the satisfactory result. I'll show you the result also. But digital image, which is considered as a two-dimensional signal. We know that our digital images are in the X direction and the Y direction also. So with this aim in the mind, we formulated two-dimensional Taylor series approximation for the digital images. For that, we knew that these one-dimensional Taylor feature pattern extraction technique can give us a good result, but their result can drop sharply if data set having illumination variance. Like in our data set, many of the data set having the illumination variations. So we need to remove that illumination from our input data. For that, we are using the logarithmic Laplace domain, where we divide the image into the reflectance component and the illumination component. Then we use the logarithmic. Then we apply the logarithmic domain in the given image. Then we apply the Laplace domain. Basically, define the key features compared to that will give us some important features compared to the pixel domain. So now our image is converted into the logarithmic Laplace domain. Then we convert into the two-dimensional Taylor pixel features using this formula, this derived formula that is derived by us. So this is all about the X direction, and this is all about the Y direction. So this is the first order two-dimensional Taylor pixel feature for the central pixel of the PC in the X direction and the Y direction. Similarly, we compute for the second order two-dimensional Taylor feature by using this derivative. Here, this is the first order two-dimensional Taylor feature, and this is the second order, and the combination of this is give us the second order two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern. So now here we stop, because if we try to more order, that will reduce our result. So we stop here and try to experiment on that two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern. That will gives us a Taylor feature map, and that map is divided into the certain blocks like the 6 by 6, 8 by 8, 10 by 10, and the 12 by 12 for extracting the more key feature from the input data. Then similarly, we convert these feature map of each block into the histogram. So that histogram is basically gives us the features for the facial expressions recognition. So from that we are getting some features, and then concatenate all the histogram of each block to make the feature vector. And then finally, two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern histogram of this TF map is called as the feature vector of the facial expression image, and that is something looking like this. So now we convert into the input image and convert into the two-dimensional Taylor feature pattern. That is our second channel. That is given to the input to our two-dimensional convolution, two-layer convolution neural network. We set this type of parameter for the convolution layer 1. This is for the max pooling layer. This is for the convolution layer 2, this one, and the subsampling layer, that is basically the pooling layer, and then get our feature vector from the input image. Concatenate all the feature vectors came from the one channel, then concatenate feature vectors came from other channel, then concatenate the feature, all the features came from first and the second channel. Do this classification using the SVM and the KNN. I did the classification also using the VGG phase also, so I'll explain in the experiment part. But here main classification is done using the SVM and the KNN with the different distance measure. Here I have used the Euclidean distance, chi-square distance, histogram intersection. I have used for the classification purpose. For the computation of the loss, we use the mean square error. Until now, it is best for the SVM and the KNN. So this is the formula for computing the loss. So this is all about the model. Now comes to the database which I have used for doing the experiment. First database is the JAP database. It has 213 images of 10 Japanese female model. Then the second database is the CK Plus database, which has 593 sequence across over 23%, and it has 8 facial expressions. Ulucasia database has around 2880 videos of 80% by the 6 expressions, and the video data set is created by our senior member, that is the 11 persons, and each video contains the 4 expressions like the normal, smiling, angry, and the open mouth. So that is just a visual view of the one of the layer of the VGG face after some computation. That is something looks like this: eyes, nose, lips, and the forehead. That is the result on the JAP data set. Here, this is the recognition accuracy, this is the iteration, and this red graph is showing our training accuracy, and this blue graph is showing our testing accuracy of the JAP database. That is something around 99.100 is the testing. It reached 100 for the training data, but something 99 around the testing data. And this black is the test loss, and this green graph showing the train loss. And this graph showing the compare the ability of each architecture for the JAP database. Like when we use only the VGG phase with the fine tuning, do the classification just only VGG phase with the fine tuning, this line is denoted as. Then the black line showing that VGG phase with the fine tuning and do some pre-processing over there. And this black line, and this red line is the proposed 2-layer CNN with the pre-processing. That is the red one, and blue one is the our model where we do the 2-channel combination. That is gives us better compared to the other result. This is the overall table about the holistic and the modular. Holistic means where we taken a full face image for the comparison, do the classification SVM and KNN with different distance measure, Euclidean, chi-square, histogram intersection. Similarly, for modular, where we taken the some regions of the face, same classification SVM, Euclidean, chi-square, and histogram intersection. You can see SVM with modular gives us a better compared to the other classifications with the CNN. So we include SVM. And this is the confusion matrix for the JAB database, where you can see happy is giving us 97 percentile, and that is confused with surprise with 2%. Similarly, for disgust gives us 96% and angry 98%. Neutral gives us 100%. Fear is 96. That is confused with 2% with sad, and 1 with angry and disgust. And sad is gives us 96 also. Surprises gives us some 96. This is the JAB database result. This is the video means the DICT dataset result. Same, this is the training accuracy, this is testing accuracy, this is training loss, and this is testing loss. This is for different architecture, and each reaches 100. It's the testing data reaches 100. This is the average accuracy after the 50 epochs of the video data sets, holistic versus the modular, and these are the architectures. These are the confusion matrix because they have only 6 expressions, so that is the confusion matrix for the 6 just 4 expressions over here. Here the best one is the normal, gives us the 99% accuracy. This is for the CK plus data set. CK plus data set is giving the training is 100, but testing is around 98 in the 50 epochs. And this is the different architectures accuracies, and this is the average of the 50 epochs for different architectures for holistic and the modular. This is the confusion matrix for the CK plus data sets. Here is the best one is given in the happy 0.98% around, and that is also confused with surprise. So that gives us. This is the similar result of the Alocasia data set. That's a testing accuracy around 99.2 or 3 something. Best accuracy, and this is the training, this is testing, and the training loss, testing loss. This is for the different architecture we have used, and this is the average of the 50 epochs for each architecture. This is the confusion matrix for the Alocasia data set, and the best is given in the angry data set around 99.47%. So, so here we are not only finding the nominant expression, but also the percentage of expressions present in the each phase. Like this peak is the happy phase, and this is the neutral. Starting from neutral to the happy is a video something, and taking the randomly four images from that. This is neutral. This is just smiling, and this is more than this, and this is the happy phase. So you can see the phase one is the red. So around 50% phase is here is the neutral. Around 15%, 15 to 80% is present is happy, and something is fear. Similarly, for the happy, if you can see, this is the phase 4. This one that is recognized around 90% happy, and some other expression also available, like surprise is available 5% around, and something 1 to 2% is about fears. Similarly, for the angry data set, this is the neutral, and that this image is the peak frame of the angry person. This is for the surprise person, and always getting a good result by our proposed method. And this is for the sad. Qualitative in the we just randomly taken the image that is trained on our data set and test in the images taken from the internet. So like these are the successful recognition. The image is happy and the prediction is also happy. This is surprise. This is also anger. This is disgust. This is also disgust. But this is some unsuccessful recognition. Like that, our ground truth is the fear, but our model is getting confused with fear, and this gives a surprise. Like ground truth is disgust, but predicted as fear. And this is the ground truth as angry and predicted the disgust. Here the ground truth is surprise and predicted as fear. The ground truth is sad and predicted as fear. And ground truth is sad and predicted is angry. So sometimes the model is not gives a correct classification. Maybe just confused with the same type of expressions. So this is all about our work. Yes, Shruti ma'am.
Okay.
Shruti, you can allow
Okay.
some questions.
Yes, yes. So anybody who wants to ask some questions to Sujata is welcome to do that. Meanwhile, I would also like to say, yeah, so if there are any questions, please, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, this is Himani here. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, the presentation was really very nice, and I'll totally appreciate this whole task of DICTs. And I actually request you to send this recording. Is it possible? Because I was having intermediary some internet issues, so some part of that I missed it in between. The
Yes,
video
the
was actually
recording-
lagging behind.
Manish,
Yes,
can
the-
you comment on that?
If you will subscribe our YouTube channel, so
Yes.
on that YouTube channel you can get this all recording maybe after 4 or 5 hours. You can get all the recordings there in the YouTube channel.
Yeah, so
Okay, that's
the
really
name of-
nice. Thank you so much, sir.
yeah, the name of the channel is AILP DIICT. So, you can-
AIILP.
AILP DIICT. So you can subscribe on that. Yeah.
Can you write down on the chat box so that everybody can get it?
Sure.
So meanwhile, all the
One more-
faculty members, yeah,
I
Himani,
just
you are
have
saying.
one doubt. I wanted to ask one question that on training your model, actually, what amount of hardware specification it required? That means on training, that how much amount of time it required, and as well as it required GPU, or you have used any kind of supercomputer resource or something like that?
So actually, I have the Mac processor, so it's sufficient for us, but it will take time like 2 to 3 days for the training. So it's taking time. It's not depend on the GPU, so it's taking time around 2 to 3 days for doing this type of training.
Okay, so I would also like to say that everybody, like all some faculties have also joined from other institutes, and so they are also encouraged to actually volunteer to speak. So because we will be having this colloquium series bi-monthly. Okay, so the next one we will be announcing in some a week's time or something. So if anybody else is also interested in sharing their research work, so you are all very welcome to write to us at ailp@diict.ac.in. The same email ID.
Somebody please write that email ID on the chat box. That is better.
Yeah, I think I'll just write it.
I have already written.
Okay. So
So
we are.
have to formally thank Sujata for her
Yeah.
talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujata, for sharing your research with all of us. I think all of us have benefited by listening to the research that you have been
Thank you.
carrying along for.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So, any questions are there? You can have a few more questions if they are there. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So, first, I have a question for Sujata.
Yes.
So, in the network architecture, you had first said
Can you
that.
please introduce yourself? Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi all, I am Ovi Khati.
Oh, Avik. Okay. Yes, Avik. Please go ahead.
Yes. So the question is that it is not a question, just a clarification. So you first said that you are using the network in module in the top architecture that you had for computing the features from the convolution networks. But you also said that you have modified the final layer also. So are you fine tuning the entire VGG network or just the final layer?
Just last block of the network I fine tune, and the remaining is same as it is like a VGG phase architecture. Just fine tune with the last block. I think there are 3 layers.
Okay, so I'll just clear myself here. That means we have just changed the last layer, and the entire network is same. The weights are same.
No, last block where there are 3 layers actually, convolution layer. Last 3 layers, and we fine tune the layer according to our training data.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if anybody else has any questions, please go ahead. Okay, so I think there are no more questions right now. So I would like to thank all of you for joining this, and we hope to really take it for a very long stint. Okay, so we will be inviting many other speakers as well, eminent researchers from various institutions outside of India as well as from India. So we would want your participation, your encouragement, and we will all go together and enrich ourselves on the research front. Okay, so that's all we have to say. Professor Suman, if you want to add something to that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I would like to thank all of you, all the organizers, all the participants, the speaker, Sujata, everybody. So it was a nice experience. We are hoping to go ahead with much more rigor and much more interactive session as long as the seminar series goes, this colloquium series goes. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we conclude the meeting now. Okay. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Okay.